He was just trying to get through another Tuesday. The dishes were piled in the sink. His daughter's lunch was half made on the counter, and his phone would not stop ringing. He was a single dad. Every morning felt like a quiet war he was fighting alone. His name was Cole, 34 years old. Tired eyes, steady hands. A man who had learned to carry everything without asking for help. He picked up the call. The voice on the other end was formal, cold, professional. A dying billionaire named Walter Hess wanted to see him. Cole had never heard that name in his life. He almost laughed, almost hung up. But then the man on the phone said something that stopped his breath completely. "Mr. Cole, this is not really about you. It is about the woman you once loved." His whole body went still, because there was only one woman that sentence could mean, and she had been gone from his life for 3 years. Cole stood in his kitchen for a long moment after the call ended. The half-made lunch was still on the counter. The dishes were still in the sink. But everything felt different now, like the air in the room had shifted without warning. He set his phone down slowly. His daughter, B, was 7 years old. She was in the next room, talking to her stuffed animals the way she always did in the morning. Her voice was soft and sweet, and completely unaware that her father's chest had just cracked open. Cole loved that little girl more than he loved breathing. And for 3 years, it had been just the two of them. He walked to the doorway and looked at her. She had her mother's eyes, that warm brown color that caught the light in a way that still hurt him sometimes. He never told B that. He never told anyone that. He just carried it. That was what Cole did. He carried things quietly and kept moving. Her name was Sarah. He had not said it out loud in months, but it lived inside him the way old music lives inside a person. Present, quiet, impossible to fully forget. Sarah had been everything to him once, not in a simple or easy way, in a deep and complicated way that only made sense when they were together. She laughed at things other people missed. She cried at documentaries about animals. She made terrible coffee and always forgot where she put her keys. And then one day, she was gone. No big fight, no dramatic ending, just a goodbye that felt too small for everything they had been. She said she needed space. She said she was lost and did not want to pull him under with her. She kissed B on the forehead, and she walked out of their apartment, and she never came back. Cole had waited. Then he had grieved. Then he had gotten up, made Ba's lunch, and kept going. That was 3 years ago, and now a stranger was dying in a mansion somewhere. And that stranger had sent someone to find Cole, not because of Cole himself, but because of Sarah. Cole did not understand it yet, but something deep in his gut told him this was not a coincidence. This was the kind of moment that changes the shape of a life. He called his neighbor to watch B for the afternoon. He got in his car and drove. The Hess estate sat on the edge of the city like something from another world. The gates were tall and iron. The driveway was long and lined with old trees that had been there longer than Cole had been alive. Everything about it said power. Old power. The kind that does not need to announce itself. A man in a dark suit met him at the door and led him inside without much conversation. The house was enormous and quiet in a way that felt intentional, like noise had been banned there for years. Cole was brought to a sitting room and told to wait. He sat on the edge of a chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. He looked at his hands. Workers' hands. Honest hands. He felt completely out of place. Then an older woman entered the room. She introduced herself as the estate's head of staff. Her expression was careful and professional, but her eyes held something softer, something that looked like sorrow. She told Cole that Walter Hess was very ill, that he had very little time left, that he had spent the last several months searching for someone, a young woman he had lost contact with long ago. Cole asked her name. The woman said it quietly. Sarah. Cole felt the word land in his chest like a stone dropped into still water. He looked at the woman across from him and asked the only question that made sense. What does a dying billionaire want with her? The woman folded her hands and said 4 words that changed everything Cole thought he knew. She is his daughter. Cole did not move for a full 10 seconds. He just sat there in that expensive chair, in that silent mansion, with those 4 words hanging in the air between him and the woman across from him. She is his daughter. He replayed every memory he had of Sarah, every conversation, every quiet night, every story she had ever told him about her past. She had grown up with a mother who worked 2 jobs. She had talked about feeling invisible as a child, about never having enough, about a father who was nothing more than a name she did not even like to say. She had never once mentioned wealth, never once mentioned a man named Walter Hess. Either she did not know, or she had kept it buried so deep that even he could not reach it. Cole stood up slowly. He thanked the woman. He told her he needed time to think. He walked back down that long driveway, past those old trees, and sat in his car without starting it. His hands rested on the steering wheel. His mind was somewhere else entirely. Finding Sarah was not as hard as he expected. He had told himself for 3 years that he did not know where she was, that she had simply vanished. But the truth was quieter and sadder than that. He had respected her silence. He had not chased her. He had let her go because she asked him to. But he still had one contact. A mutual friend named Dara, who kept things close to her chest, but always answered when it mattered. Cole sent Dara a message that evening after B was asleep. By the next morning, he had an address. Sarah was living 40 minutes away, in a small apartment in a neighborhood that was nothing like where she grew up and nothing like where he had expected her to end up. He drove there on a Thursday morning with no real plan. Just a truth he had to deliver and a feeling he had not fully named yet. He knocked on her door. When she opened it, the world got very small very fast. She looked the same, and completely different. Her hair was shorter. There were shadows under her eyes that had not been there before. She was thinner. She was wearing an old sweater and holding a coffee mug, and she looked at him like he was something she had dreamed and did not trust. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then she said his name. Just his name. Quietly. Like a question. Cole. He said he was sorry to show up without warning. He said it was important. He said there was something she needed to hear, and he did not know an easy way to say it. She let him in. The apartment was small and neat. There were books everywhere. A plant on the windowsill that was somehow still alive. A single coffee cup on the table. Everything about the space said she was surviving. Getting by, but not quite living. He sat across from her at her small table and told her everything. The phone call. The mansion. Walter Hess. The dying man who had sent people searching for her. The estate employee who had said those 4 words like they were both simple and catastrophic. Sarah listened without interrupting. Her face was very still. The kind of still that only happens when a person is holding something enormous inside and refusing to let it show. When Cole finished, the room was completely silent. Then Sarah set down her coffee mug. Very carefully, like if she moved too fast something inside her would break. She looked at him, and her voice came out low and flat and controlled. That man is not my father. He is a stranger who made a choice a long time ago. And that choice is not my problem. Cole looked at her for a long moment. He is dying, Sarah? He has days, maybe less. She looked away toward the window, toward that small plant somehow still holding on. And he watched something move across her face that she was clearly not ready to name. Sarah did not answer right away. She kept her eyes on that window, on the small plant on the sill, on anything that was not Cole's face. Cole waited. He had always been good at waiting for her. That had never changed. Outside, the city moved the way it always did. Indifferent. Continuous. Unbothered by the wait sitting inside this small apartment. Finally she spoke. She said she had known about Walter Hess since she was 19 years old. Her mother had told her on a night that started ordinary and ended with Sarah sitting on a bathroom floor, trying to make sense of a life she thought she understood. Her mother had loved Walter once. Deeply. Completely. The way young people love before the world teaches them caution. But Walter had come from a family with expectations and conditions and a carefully constructed future that did not include a woman like her mother. When the pregnancy came, his family moved quickly. There were conversations Sarah's mother was not part of, decisions made without her. And then Walter was simply gone. Moved away. Married someone else. Living a life built on old money and new silence. Sarah's mother raised her alone. She worked. She sacrificed. She never spoke bitterly about it, which Sarah always thought was the bravest thing she had ever witnessed. But she also never healed from it. Not completely. Cole listened to all of this without moving. He had known Sarah for years, and she had never told him any of this. Not one word. That truth sat between them now, heavy and honest. He did not ask her why she had kept it from him. He understood it without needing the explanation. Some wounds are so old and so personal that sharing them feels like handing someone a piece of you that you are not sure you will get back. Sarah finally turned away from the window and looked at him. She asked him why he came. She asked why he did not just pass the information to someone else. A lawyer. A mutual contact. Anyone but him. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said the truth. He said he came because he knew no one else would tell her the right way. He said he came because whatever had happened between them, she still deserved to hear something this big from someone who actually cared what it did to her. Something shifted in her expression. Just slightly. A softness that came and went so fast he almost missed it. Then she pulled her walls back up. She said she needed him to leave. She said she needed to think. She said she was not making any promises about anything. Cole nodded. He stood. He moved toward the door. And then Bea's name came out of Sarah's mouth before she could stop it. She asked how he was doing. Her voice was different when she said it. Smaller, like the question cost her something. Cole stopped at the door. He turned and looked at her. He said B was good. He said she was 7 now and obsessed with drawing horses, even though she had never seen a real one. He said she still slept with the stuffed rabbit Sarah had given her when she was 4. Sarah looked down at the table. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. Cole left without another word. He drove home. He picked B up from school. He made dinner. He read her a story and turned off her light and sat on the edge of her bed in the dark for a long moment after she fell asleep. He thought about Sarah's face when he mentioned the rabbit. He thought about the plant on her windowsill. Still alive. Still reaching toward light it could barely find. And deep in a place he rarely visited, something in him began to hope again. If you are feeling the weight of this story already, you are not alone. Drop a comment and tell us what you think Sarah should do. Should she go to the mansion or walk away forever? Sarah called him 2 days later. Cole was in the middle of helping B with her homework when his phone lit up on the kitchen table. He saw the name. He stared at it for 1 full second before answering. Her voice was calm, measured, like she had rehearsed what she was going to say and was determined to get through it without falling apart. She said she would go to the mansion. She said she was not going for Walter Hess. She was going for her mother. Because her mother had carried that man's silence for decades and deserved to have someone look him in the eye before it was too late. Cole said he understood. She asked if he would come with her. The question surprised him. He could hear in her voice that it surprised her too, like it had come out before she had fully decided to say it. He did not hesitate. He said yes. They drove to the Hess estate on a gray Saturday morning. He was at his neighbor's place. The roads were quiet. The city was still waking up. Sarah sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded in her lap. She looked straight ahead. She did not make small talk, and Cole did not push for it. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was careful, like 2 people walking across ice and choosing each step deliberately. Halfway there she spoke. She said she was sorry. Not about Walter. Not about the mansion. About leaving. About the way she had walked out of his life 3 years ago without giving him the full truth of why. Cole kept his eyes on the road. He asked her what the full truth was. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said that when she found out about Walter Hess, something broke in her. Not suddenly. Slowly. Like a crack that spreads across glass over time until the whole thing gives way. She said she had started feeling like she did not know who she was. Like her whole foundation had been built on a story with missing pieces. And she did not want Cole and B to watch her fall apart. She did not want to be something broken in the middle of their lives. Cole's jaw tightened. He said softly that she should have let him decide that. Sarah looked out the window. She did not argue. She just nodded once. Small and honest. That nod meant more than a long speech would have. The mansion was exactly as Cole remembered it. Tall gates. Long driveway. Old trees. That deep and deliberate quiet. But this time, walking in beside Sarah, it felt different. More loaded. Like the house itself knew why they were there. They were brought upstairs by the same woman Cole had met before. She led them down a hallway lined with portraits and closed doors and the particular stillness of a place where someone is waiting to die. At the end of the hall, she stopped and knocked softly on a door. A faint voice answered from inside. The woman opened the door and stepped aside. Sarah did not move at first. Cole stood beside her. He did not touch her. He did not speak. He simply stayed close enough that she could feel he was there. She breathed in slowly. Then she stepped through the door. The room was large, but felt intimate. The curtains were half drawn. The light was soft and gray. In the bed near the window lay a man who looked like someone had taken all the power out of him and left only the outline behind. Walter Hess was old, pale, fragile in a way that money could not fix. He turned his head when he heard them enter. And when his eyes found Sarah's face, they filled immediately, like he had been holding that moment for a very long time. This is the moment everything changes. If this story is pulling at your heart, hit the like button and stay with us because what Walter says next will break you and rebuild you at the same time. He just looked at her. Like a man seeing water after years in a desert. Like someone who had rehearsed this moment 10,000 times, and now that it was here, every prepared word had left him completely. Sarah stood near the door. Her shoulders were straight. Her face was composed. But Cole could see her hands. She had pressed them together in front of her, and her knuckles were pale. She was holding herself together by sheer will. Walter's voice came out thin and broken when he finally spoke. He said her name. Just her name. The way people say the names of things they thought they had lost forever. Sarah. She did not respond. She simply waited. He said he knew she had no reason to be there. He said he knew he had no right to ask anything of her. He said he had spent the better part of 30 years telling himself that what happened was complicated, that he had no choice, that circumstances and family pressure and fear had made the decision for him. He stopped. He looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then he said that was a lie he had told himself so many times it had almost started to feel true. The room was completely still. He said the truth was simpler and uglier. He was young, and he was afraid, and he chose the easier path. He chose his family's approval over a woman who loved him. He chose comfort over courage. And a child, his child, had grown up without a father because of that choice. Sarah's breath shifted. Cole heard it from where he stood near the window. Walter turned his head toward her, and his eyes were wet and tired and completely without defense. He said he was not asking for forgiveness. He said he understood if she hated him. He said he just needed her to know that not a year had passed without him thinking about her, without wondering who she had become, without carrying the weight of what he had done. He said her mother was the bravest and most dignified woman he had ever known, and he had treated that dignity like it was something he could afford to waste. Something cracked in Sarah's face. Not completely, not all at once, but a fracture appeared that she could not hide. She took 2 steps closer to the bed. She looked down at this old man who was her father in biology and a stranger in every other way. She said she did not hate him. She said hate would have required her to think about him more than she was willing to. She said what she felt was something colder and quieter than hate. She felt the absence of him, the shape of a space in her life where a father should have been. Every school event he never attended. Every hard day her mother faced alone. Every moment Sarah herself had wondered if she was lovable enough to stay for. Her voice stayed level through all of it. That was the most heartbreaking part. Walter closed his eyes. A single tear moved down the side of his face. Cole stood near the window and said nothing. This was not his moment. He knew that, but he felt every word in the room land inside him like something was being rearranged in his own chest. Then Walter opened his eyes and looked past Sarah. He looked at Cole. He said he had heard about him, that his people had shared details when they were searching for Sarah. He said he understood Cole had raised a child alone and had come here out of loyalty to someone who had left him behind. He looked at Cole for a long, quiet moment. Then he said something that neither Cole nor Sarah expected. He said the reason he had searched for Sarah was not only to apologize. There was something else, something that involved Cole directly. And the moment those words landed, Sarah turned and looked at Cole with an expression he had never seen on her face before. Something between fear and the fragile beginning of understanding. If you have ever had to face someone who hurt you and find a way to stay standing, you know exactly how Sarah feels right now. Subscribe and stay with us because what Walter reveals next changes everything we thought we knew about why Sarah really left. Walter reached slowly toward the small table beside his bed. His hand was unsteady. His movements were careful in the way that very ill people move, like every action costs something they are running out of. He picked up a worn envelope and held it without opening it. He looked at Cole first. He said that when his people were searching for Sarah, they had traced her path backward, through the years, through the places she had lived and the choices she had made. And in doing that, they had found something. Something that had been set in motion a long time ago by people who worked for his family. Cole felt the air in the room change. Walter said that when his family discovered Sarah's mother had stayed in contact with him briefly, years after he left, they panicked. They hired people to make sure that connection stayed severed. And later, when Sarah had built a life of her own and found someone she loved, those same people took notice. He paused. His breathing was slow and labored. He said someone from his former legal team had made contact with Sarah 3 years ago. They told her that if she stayed with Cole and B, certain information would be released. Information that would damage Cole's custody arrangement. False information, fabricated and carefully constructed, but convincing enough to cause real harm in a courtroom. They told her the easiest way to protect Cole and B was to remove herself from their lives completely. The room was absolutely silent. Cole could not move. He stood near the window and felt 3 years of quiet grief rearrange itself into something new. Something sharp and clarifying. The long nights he had spent wondering what he had done wrong. The mornings he had watched B reach for someone who was no longer there. The way he had made peace with a loss that was never actually what it appeared to be. He turned and looked at Sarah. She was already looking at him. Her eyes were full and her jaw was tight, and she looked like someone who had been holding a confession for 3 years and was only now being given permission to put it down. She said his name. Just Cole. The way she had said it at her apartment door. Like a question and an apology folded into a single word. He could not speak yet, so he just looked at her. Walter held out the envelope. He said it contained signed statements from the people involved. Legal documentation. Proof that what was done to them was deliberate and wrong. He said his lawyers had already ensured that nothing in those fabricated files could ever be used against Cole or B. He said it was the last thing he had been able to do, and he was sorry it had taken him this long to undo the damage his family's cruelty had caused. Sarah took the envelope with both hands. She held it against her chest, and then something in her finally broke open. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet unraveling. The kind that happens when a person has been strong for so long that the moment safety finally arrives, the body does not know how to hold itself together anymore. Cole crossed the room without thinking. He did not say anything. He simply put his arms around her, and she leaned into him, and the 3 years between them collapsed like they had never existed at all. Walter watched them from his bed. His expression was not happy exactly. It was something more complicated than happiness. It was the look of a man who had caused a wound and was watching it begin to heal, knowing he would not be there to see it finish. He closed his eyes. Outside the window, the sky had begun to clear. Pale light moved across the floor of that quiet room. And in the middle of all that loss and truth and carefully folded pain, something tender and real had found its way back to breathing. Walter Hess passed away 4 days later, peacefully, with Sarah sitting beside him, not as a daughter who had forgiven everything, but as a woman who had chosen grace over bitterness and found that grace had its own kind of healing power. He left her a portion of his estate. But more than that, he left her the truth. And the truth gave her back something no amount of money could have purchased. It gave her back Cole. And Cole, who had spent 3 years being a quiet and steady and faithful kind of man, held his daughter's hand at the small kitchen table that evening and told B that someone very special might be coming back into their lives. B looked up at him with those warm brown eyes. She asked if it was the lady who gave her the rabbit. Cole smiled for the first time in a very long time. He said yes. B nodded seriously, like this made complete sense to her 7-year-old heart. She said good, because the rabbit missed her. And just like that, in the simplest and most honest language in the world, a family found its way back to itself. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that some loves are worth waiting for. And if you are new here, subscribe, because every week we bring you stories full of drama, heart, and the kind of truth that stays with you long after the last word.